The alien encounter. The sky turned dark in the middle of the day. It wasn't a storm or an eclipse. It was something far more terrifying. A massive alien ship, larger than any human city, had appeared in Earth's orbit. Its surface gleamed with strange lights, and its size blocked out the sun in several parts of the world. People ran outside, staring in shock and fear. Governments around the globe scrambled to respond. Military bases were put on high alert. Satellites tried to scan the alien ship, and scientists attempted to communicate. But no one had any answers. Who were these aliens? What did they want? And most importantly, why now? The ship didn't wait long to make its intentions clear. A deep mechanical voice echoed across the world, coming through every device. Phones, TVs, radios, even old machines no one had used for years. The voice spoke in perfect English, cold and emotionless. Humans of Earth, we are the Exhilarating. Your planet now belongs to us. Surrender or face annihilation. The message repeated 3 times before the voice went silent. Panic spread everywhere. People fled cities, hid in bunkers, and prayed for a miracle. News channels showed endless debates, but no one had a solution. The alien ship didn't move or attack further. It just floated silently in the sky, like a predator waiting for its prey to weaken. In the chaos, one person remained calm. Dr. Elara Hayes, a brilliant but reclusive scientist, watched the news from her quiet lab. She wasn't surprised by the aliens' arrival. In fact, she had been expecting something like this for years. It was only a matter of time, she muttered, pushing her glasses up her nose. Her colleagues, a small group of engineers and researchers, looked at her nervously. "What do we do, Dr. Hayes?" one of them asked. "Our weapons are useless against something like that." Elara smiled faintly, her sharp eyes glinting with determination. "We do what humans have always done," she said. "We fight back." The Exhilarating weren't just watching. They were preparing. Hidden in their massive ship, they had machines scanning Earth's defenses. They laughed at the primitive technology humans had. Their shields were impenetrable, their weapons far beyond anything humans could imagine. They didn't see Earth as a challenge, just another weak planet to conquer. But they didn't understand humans. While most governments were debating whether to surrender, Elara began her work. She made calls to old contacts, engineers, hackers, strategists. She didn't promise them safety, only a chance to fight for their planet. "If we're going to lose," she told them, "we'll make sure they remember us." The team gathered in a hidden underground bunker, deep in the mountains. Elara led them to a massive table covered in blueprints, tools, and scraps of strange materials. "This," she said, pointing to a large metallic object in the center, "is our chance." The object didn't look like much, just a rough piece of machinery with wires sticking out. But Elara spoke about it like it was humanity's greatest weapon. "The Exhilarating think we're weak," she explained. "They don't realize we adapt. We learn. And we use what we have in ways no one expects." "What is it?" someone asked. Elara's smile widened. "It's not ready yet. But if we finish it, it will turn their own technology against them." Meanwhile, the Exhilarating sent a smaller ship into Earth's atmosphere. It hovered over major cities, scanning and recording everything. The sight of it struck fear into people's hearts. In some places, riots broke out. In others, people gave up hope completely. But Elara wasn't afraid. She studied the ship's movements carefully, taking notes. She noticed something strange. Despite their advanced technology, the Exhilarating ships seemed to rely heavily on patterns. They moved in predictable ways, following the same paths over and over. "They're efficient," Elara said to her team, "but they're not creative. That's where we win." Her team worked day and night, building, testing, and planning. They used scraps of alien tech from past encounters, combined with Earth's natural resources. The work was dangerous. One wrong move could cause an explosion. But no one stopped. They all knew the stakes. Then the Xandari issued a new message. "You have 48 hours to surrender," the voice declared. "Resistance is futile. Your planet will burn if you refuse." The world froze. Leaders argued, people panicked, and the clock ticked down. But in the bunker, Ilara's team didn't stop. With every passing second, their strange device took shape. As the final hours approached, something unexpected happened. The Xandari detected a faint signal coming from the mountains. Ilara's team had been discovered. A small group of alien drones was sent to investigate. Ilara's team spotted them on the bunker's cameras, sleek machines glowing with blue light, closing in fast. "Looks like we're out of time," Ilara said, her voice calm but firm. "Everyone, to your positions." The team scrambled to prepare for their first real battle. They didn't have much, just a few improvised weapons and their half-finished device, but they were ready to fight. The drones descended, firing beams of energy that tore through the ground. Ilara stood at the center of the bunker, holding a small remote control. Her fingers hovered over the button as she watched the drones draw closer. "Wait for it," she murmured. The drones entered the bunker's perimeter. Ilara pressed the button. A blinding flash of light filled the air, followed by a deafening sound. When the smoke cleared, the drones were gone, destroyed by a hidden electromagnetic trap. The team cheered, but Ilara didn't smile. "They know we're here now," she said. This was just the beginning. She looked up at the sky, where the massive alien ship still loomed. "Let's show them what humans can do." The first strike. The Xandari ship in orbit had been silent for hours. It didn't need to rush. It had all the power, all the time. Or so it thought. Deep inside its cold, metallic halls, alien commanders reviewed the faint signal detected earlier, the one that led their drones to a mysterious trap. They were puzzled. Primitive civilizations didn't usually fight back this way. Most surrendered. Some begged. But humans? They were strange. The Xandari commander, a towering figure with silver skin and glowing yellow eyes, stared at the holographic display in front of him. It showed the wreckage of the destroyed drones. His clawed hand hovered over the controls, hesitating for a moment. "These humans are reckless," he said, his voice a low growl. "They don't value survival. They gamble." "Should we eliminate the region, Commander?" an officer asked, his voice filled with cold efficiency. The commander tilted his head, considering. "No, not yet. Let them struggle. It's more interesting this way." The officer bowed and left. The commander's glowing eyes narrowed as he muttered, "Let's see what your gamble is worth, humans." Far below, in the bunker hidden deep in the mountains, Ilara Hayes leaned over her strange device, adjusting a series of glowing wires. Her team was exhausted. Some had burns on their hands. Others had dark circles under their eyes. But none of them complained. There was too much at stake. "Do you think they'll come back?" one of the younger engineers, a man named Sam, asked nervously. His voice shook as he spoke. "They won't just come back," Ilara said without looking up. "They'll strike harder. Smarter." Sam swallowed hard. "So, what do we do?" Ilara straightened and finally looked at him. "We don't wait. We strike first." The room fell silent. Everyone stared at her in disbelief. "Strike them?" Another team member asked. "You can't be serious. They're in orbit. Their technology is." "Not invincible," Ilara interrupted. Her tone was calm but firm. "They think we're predictable, just like every other species they've crushed. But they've never faced us before." She stepped to the center of the room and pointed at the large screen on the wall. It displayed a detailed blueprint of the Xandari ship, based on years of incomplete scans and data from previous encounters. "They have weak points," she said, zooming in on a section of the ship near its lower hull. "This is their primary communications hub. If we can disrupt it, even for a few seconds, they'll be blind and deaf long enough for us to hit them where it hurts." "But how?" Sam asked, his voice trembling. "We don't even have rockets that can reach orbit. Ilara smiled. A sharp, cunning smile. Who said anything about rockets? Hours later, under the cover of night, a convoy of unmarked trucks moved through the mountains. Inside the largest truck was the strange device Ilara's team had built, a bulky machine covered in wires and humming with energy. The convoy stopped in a remote valley, surrounded by cliffs. This was the launch site. "Are you sure this will work?" one of the engineers whispered as they unloaded the device. "No," Ilara admitted, "but it's the best chance we have." The team worked quickly, setting up the device on a reinforced platform. It looked nothing like a weapon, more like a twisted sculpture of earth metals and alien scraps. Its purpose was simple but terrifying: to generate a pulse of energy strong enough to disrupt the Xandari systems. But it had a drawback. The pulse would be so powerful it could temporarily shut down everything within a 50-mile radius. Human technology included. A necessary risk, Ilara had argued. As the team worked, the ground began to tremble. A low, humming noise filled the air. Ilara's head snapped up. She recognized the sound instantly. Xandari drones. "They're here," she said sharply. "Everyone. Positions now." The team scrambled, grabbing makeshift weapons, modified EMP grenades, energy rifles built from scavenged alien parts. The sky lit up as a squadron of drones descended, their sleek, silver forms glowing with blue energy. The battle began. The first drone fired, sending a beam of searing light toward the convoy. The humans barely dodged it, the explosion rocking the ground beneath them. Ilara's team fought back, launching EMP grenades that temporarily disabled the drones. One by one, the drones fell, but more kept coming. In the chaos, Ilara sprinted toward the device. She ducked under a collapsing structure, sparks flying around her. When she reached the control panel, her fingers flew across the keys. "Just a little longer," she muttered. "Come on." Behind her, Sam and another engineer fought off two drones that had broken through the perimeter. One of the drones fired a direct hit, sending Sam flying. He hit the ground hard, groaning in pain. "Ilara," he shouted. "They're getting closer." "I'm almost there," she yelled back. Her hands didn't stop moving. Finally, the device powered up. A deep hum filled the air, growing louder and louder. The remaining drones hesitated, their movements jerky and uncoordinated. Ilara slammed her hand down on the activation button. The valley erupted in a blinding pulse of energy. The drones dropped from the sky like stones, their systems fried. The pulse extended upward, reaching the Xandari ship in orbit. For a moment, the massive ship flickered, its lights dimming. Ilara stood, breathing heavily, as silence fell over the valley. Her team emerged from their hiding spots, battered but alive. "Did it work?" Sam asked, limping toward her. Ilara stared up at the sky. The Xandari ship was still there, but something had changed. A small section of its hull sparked and smoked, their first victory. "It worked," she said, her voice filled with quiet triumph. "But they'll be angry now." And she was right. High above, in the alien ship, the Xandari commander stared at the damage with disbelief. His cold, mechanical voice rang out in fury. "These humans, they've crossed the line. Prepare for full retaliation." The Ingenious trap. The Xandari ship in orbit was no longer silent. Its once motionless form now glowed with sharp pulses of light as it prepared for a counterstrike. Deep within its towering halls, the Xandari commander paced. His silver skin shimmered under the light of alien displays, each one showing detailed scans of Earth's surface. "These humans are not like the others," he muttered, his voice low and laced with frustration. "They think faster, adapt quicker, but their defiance will cost them." "Commander," an officer reported, bowing slightly, "we have pinpointed their energy pulse origin. It came from a mountain valley, but the signal has vanished." The commander's yellow eyes flared. "Vanished." His voice was sharp. "They are hiding. They think they can outwit us. Send the hunters. Flush them out." Far below, in the hidden bunker, Ilara Hayes reviewed the results of their daring strike. A small but crucial section of the Xandari ship's lower hull had been damaged. Not enough to cripple them, but enough to buy time. The team was exhausted, but there was no time to rest. "They'll retaliate," Ilara said, pacing in front of the group. "We've forced them to take us seriously. Now they'll come for us. And they won't stop until we're ashes." Sam, leaning against the wall with a bandage over his arm, groaned. "So what's the plan?" "We keep running." Ilara stopped and looked at him. "No," she said firmly. "We make them come to us. And this time, we trap them." By nightfall, the team had relocated to a new site, an abandoned research facility nestled in the heart of a dense forest. The facility was old and crumbling, but its underground tunnels provided perfect cover. Ilara had chosen it carefully. It wasn't just a hiding spot, it was bait. "This place has a natural magnetic field," she explained as the team set up their equipment. "It'll mess with their sensors just enough to give us an edge." "And what happens when they find us?" asked one of the engineers, her voice trembling. "They'll have more drones, maybe even ground troops." Ilara's lips curled into a faint smile. "That's the idea." The Xandari weren't wasting time. Hunter drones, faster and deadlier than the ones destroyed in the valley, swept through the skies. Their glowing blue eyes scanned every inch of the landscape, their sleek forms cutting through the night like silent predators. It didn't take long for them to detect faint heat signatures coming from the forest. The drones paused, then moved as one, closing in on the abandoned facility. Inside, Ilara watched their approach on a grainy monitor. Her team sat tense, gripping makeshift weapons. Every sound seemed amplified in the quiet of the bunker. The hum of the machines, the distant rustle of the wind. "Wait for it," Ilara whispered. The drones entered the forest, their sensors detecting faint energy readings coming from the facility's entrance. They moved cautiously, scanning for signs of life. One drone hovered near the entrance, its blue light illuminating the crumbling walls. Then it happened. A flash of light burst from the treetops as a hidden electromagnetic device activated. The drone froze midair, its systems overwhelmed by the surge. It crashed to the ground with a metallic thud. "Now," Ilara shouted. Her team sprang into action, triggering a series of traps they had set earlier. Nets of high-tensile wire shot from the ground, ensnaring two more drones. Another drone fired a beam of energy, but it struck a decoy device, detonating harmlessly. The Xandari weren't unprepared, though. More drones swarmed in, dodging traps and firing relentlessly. Ilara's team fought back, using modified weapons to disable the machines. Sparks flew, explosions rocked the ground, and the forest lit up like a battlefield. Inside the Xandari ship, the commander observed the chaos with narrowed eyes. The humans were clever, he admitted. They had turned the terrain into a weapon. But cleverness had limits. "Deploy the ground units," he ordered coldly. "No more games." Back on Earth, the first wave of Xandari ground troops, a squad of towering, silver-skinned warriors, descended into the forest. They moved with terrifying precision, their glowing weapons slicing through trees as they advanced on the facility. Ilara's team heard the approaching footsteps, a steady, mechanical rhythm that sent chills down their spines. "They've sent their troops," Sam muttered, gripping his weapon tightly. "We're dead." Ilara shook her head. "Not yet." She pointed to the central control panel. "Activate Phase 2. Phase 2 of Ilara's plan was risky, even by her standards. The team had rigged the facility's underground tunnels with improvised explosives, linked to a network of pressure-sensitive triggers. The goal wasn't just to destroy the Xandari troops. It was to lure them deeper into the trap. As the alien warriors entered the tunnels, the team retreated to a secure chamber. Ilara watched the monitors, her finger hovering over a detonator. "Come on," she murmured, "just a little further." The Xandari moved methodically, scanning every corner. They found nothing but empty rooms and debris. One of the warriors paused, its glowing eyes narrowing as it detected something unusual, a faint hum beneath the floor. It was too late. Ilara pressed the button. A chain of explosions ripped through the tunnels, collapsing sections of the facility. The ground shook violently, and smoke billowed into the air. The Xandari troops were caught in the blast, their sleek forms crushed under tons of rubble. The team emerged from their hiding spot, coughing and covered in dust. The facility was in ruins, but they were alive. For now. Sam looked at Ilara, his expression a mix of awe and fear. That actually worked. Ilara didn't smile. She stared at the smoking wreckage, her mind already racing ahead. It worked, she said, but it won't stop them. This was just another test. She turned to her team, her eyes blazing with determination. We have to be smarter, faster, because next time, they won't send drones or troops. They'll come themselves. High above, the Xandari commander watched the failure of his forces with a clenched jaw. His voice was low, filled with cold fury. "Prepare the strike team," he growled. "If these humans want to play games, we'll show them what it means to face the Xandari." Turning the tide. The air crackled with tension. High in orbit, the Xandari commander stood before a massive holographic display of Earth, his yellow eyes fixed on the blinking red dot, marking the humans' last known position. The loss of their ground troops was not just a failure, it was an insult. "These humans are relentless," the commander said, his voice echoing in the quiet command chamber. "Their defiance is impressive, but irrelevant." A smaller Xandari officer approached cautiously. "Commander, we are preparing the strike team as ordered. Should we also deploy planetary bombardment?" The commander raised a clawed hand to silence him. "Not yet. I want to see their ingenuity up close. Prepare the assault craft. I will lead this myself." In the forest below, the hidden bunker was a hive of activity. Ilara Hayes and her team worked tirelessly, patching up their equipment and fortifying their defenses. The improvised traps and weapons had done their job earlier, but they wouldn't survive another wave, not against what was coming. "Do we even stand a chance this time?" Sam asked, his voice heavy with doubt. He sat on the floor, cradling his arm, still recovering from the earlier fight. Ilara shot him a look, her gaze sharp and unwavering. "We don't just stand a chance. We make a chance." She turned back to the table where a strange contraption lay. It looked like a fusion of human and alien technology, a sleek device with glowing panels and jagged edges. The team had been working on it for days, but it was still untested. "This," Ilara said, placing a hand on the device, "is our key to turning the tide." "What does it do?" another team member asked, leaning in closer. Ilara smirked. "It's a disruptor. If we can get close enough to their main ship, it'll overload their systems, shields, weapons, communications, everything." Sam frowned. "And how do we get close enough?" "They're in orbit, Ilara. That's the problem I'm solving," she replied, already moving toward another workstation. "We're not sending it to them. We're bringing them to us." Far above, the Xandari assault craft broke through the atmosphere, their sleek, triangular forms glowing with ominous light. At their helm was the commander himself, seated on a throne-like chair that pulsed with energy. The ship's interiors were cold and metallic, filled with faint otherworldly hums. As the fleet descended, the commander issued his orders. "Surround the area. Herd them into the open. No survivors." The Xandari craft spread out, their sensors scanning the dense forest below. They moved with precision, detecting faint heat signatures and energy fluctuations. One ship fired a warning shot, a beam of light that obliterated an entire section of trees. But the humans were ready. Inside the bunker, Ilara's voice rang out. "Phase 3 is a go. Everyone, to your positions." The team scattered, each person knowing their role. They had set up a network of decoy signals throughout the forest, heat sources, false energy readings, and carefully planted devices that mimicked human activity. The goal was simple: confuse the Xandari and lead them into the trap. The first Xandari craft hovered over a decoy signal, scanning it carefully. It detected faint movement and fired, obliterating the spot with precision. But when the smoke cleared, there was nothing, just an empty crater. Another ship moved toward a different signal, only to encounter a hidden EMP mine. The explosion wasn't enough to destroy the craft, but it disabled its sensors temporarily, forcing it to retreat. Ilara watched the chaos unfold on a monitor, her heart pounding. "Good. Keep them guessing," she muttered. "We need to buy more time." The Xandari commander frowned as reports of false signals came flooding in. He leaned forward in his chair, his sharp gaze scanning the displays. "They're toying with us," he growled. "These decoys are a distraction. Focus all scans on energy clusters. Find the source of their operations." One of the Xandari ships finally detected the bunker. It fired a concentrated beam, collapsing part of the hillside and exposing the entrance. "They found us," Sam shouted, running toward Ilara. "We need to move." Ilara didn't flinch. Instead, she grabbed the disruptor device and slung it over her shoulder. "No," she said. "This is exactly what we wanted." Her team stared at her in disbelief. "We've led them here," she explained, "because this is where we fight back." As the Xandari troops advanced on the bunker, the humans launched their final trap. Hidden in the surrounding area were makeshift energy cannons, powered by scavenged alien tech. The first cannon fired, striking one of the assault craft and sending it crashing to the ground. Another cannon took out a group of ground troops, their glowing armor shattering under the blast. But the Xandari weren't easily defeated. The commander's ship descended, its shields absorbing the cannon fire effortlessly. The massive craft loomed over the battlefield, its weapons powering up for a devastating strike. Inside the bunker, Ilara activated the disruptor. The device hummed to life, its panels glowing brighter with each passing second. She turned to her team, her expression deadly serious. "This is it," she said. "We have one shot." The disruptor emitted a powerful energy pulse, targeting the Xandari commander's ship. The pulse slammed into the craft's shields, causing them to flicker and weaken. The commander's yellow eyes widened in surprise. "Impressive," he muttered. "But not enough." He ordered his ship to fire, but before it could, Ilara's team launched their last weapon, a modified projectile containing a second disruptor device. The projectile struck the weakened shields, piercing through and detonating inside the craft. The explosion rocked the forest, sending shockwaves through the air. The Xandari ship wavered, its systems failing one by one. Smoke poured from its hull as it struggled to remain airborne. The commander's voice echoed through the chaos. "This isn't over," he growled. "You haven't won." But as the ship crashed into the ground, it was clear that humanity had done the impossible. They had turned the tide. The team stood in silence, watching the smoldering wreckage. For the first time, a glimmer of hope shone in their eyes. But Ilara's expression remained hard. "This was just a battle," she said quietly. "The war is far from over." High above, the Xandari mothership began to stir. The commander was right. This wasn't over. Not yet. The price of genius. The forest was still smoldering. The wreckage of the Xandari assault craft lay scattered like broken toys, their once mighty forms reduced to lifeless metal. Ilara Hayes and her team stood at the edge of the battlefield, battered but alive. For a brief moment, there was silence, a victory that felt fragile, as if it could shatter at any second. "We did it," Sam muttered, staring at the smoking remains of the Xandari commander's ship. His voice carried a mix of disbelief and relief. "We actually stopped them." Ilara's expression didn't soften. Her eyes were fixed on the sky. Above them, the Xandari mothership loomed, still intact, its cold lights blinking ominously. "No," she said quietly. "This was just the opening act. They're coming." High in orbit, the Xandari mothership began to stir, Inside its vast, cathedral-like command center, the surviving officers stood before their commander. He was injured, his silver skin cracked and bleeding from the crash, but his glowing yellow eyes burned with fury. "These humans are dangerous," he said, his voice colder than ever. "They fight like cornered animals, with nothing to lose. But even animals can be broken." One officer hesitated before speaking. "Commander, the humans' weapon disrupted our systems. We still don't understand how they created such a device. It shouldn't be possible." The commander's claws tightened into fists. "They used pieces of our own technology against us. Ingenious, yes, but reckless. If they are so eager to gamble with destruction, then we will raise the stakes." He turned to a glowing console and tapped a series of commands. The ship's massive energy core rumbled to life, sending waves of power through its systems. The ship's lights turned from white to deep red, a signal of preparation for total war. "Activate the singularity cannon," the commander ordered. "If they want to test the limits of their genius, let them face ours." Back on Earth, Ilara's team regrouped in a hidden underground bunker, a backup facility stocked with the last of their supplies. The disruptor device had worked, but it was spent, and they had no way to build another. Their victory had cost them everything. Ilara paced in front of the group, her mind racing. Her team looked at her, waiting for answers, for hope. "What now?" one of them asked. "We can't fight a mothership with what we have left." Ilara stopped and turned to face them. "We don't fight the ship," she said. "We fight their minds." The team exchanged confused glances. Sam frowned. "What does that even mean?" "They think we're just clever animals," Ilara explained. "They don't see us as equals. That's their weakness. They expect us to fight like prey. So, we're going to do something they'll never see coming." She pulled out a small battered device from her pocket, a fragment of the disruptor that had survived the last battle. Its glowing core pulsed faintly. "This is all we have left," she said, "but it's enough to send a signal." "A signal?" Sam asked, his voice rising. "You mean contact them?" "Ilara, they'll wipe us out the second they hear from us." Ilara shook her head. "Not if we give them something they can't ignore." The Xandari mothership hovered in low orbit, its massive shadow casting darkness over entire cities. Its singularity cannon, a weapon capable of folding space itself, was charging, drawing energy from the ship's core. Suddenly, an alert echoed through the command center. "Commander," an officer said, his voice tense, "we're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's from the humans." The commander frowned. "Put it through." A holographic projection flickered to life, showing Ilara Hayes standing in the center of her bunker. Her face was bruised, her clothes torn, but her eyes were steady and defiant. "Xandari Commander," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I know you're watching. I know you're planning to destroy us. But before you do, you might want to hear what I have to say." The commander leaned forward, intrigued despite himself. "You are bold to address me directly, human. Do you think words will save your kind?" Ilara's faint smile didn't waver. "Not words. Proof." She held up the glowing fragment of the disruptor. "This is what we use to disable your systems. It's not just a weapon. It's a key. And we figured out what it unlocks." The commander's eyes narrowed. "Lies. Your technology is primitive." "Is it?" Ilara replied, tilting her head. "Then why are you listening?" There was a pause, and Ilara pressed on. "Your ship runs on a quantum lattice core, doesn't it? That's how you generate the energy for your weapons. But here's the thing about quantum systems. They're unstable. And now, thanks to you, we know how to destabilize them." The commander stiffened. "Impossible." Ilara's smile widened. "Try me." In the bunker, Ilara's team watched the transmission in stunned silence. San whispered, "What are you doing, Ilara? We can't actually do that." Ilara muted the transmission and turned to him. "We don't have to. They just need to believe we can." The Xandari commander's mind raced. Could the humans truly possess such knowledge? Their disruptor had already proven effective against his fleet. If they had figured out how to target the quantum core, the mothership itself could be at risk. He growled low in his throat, his pride warring with caution. "Prepare the strike," he ordered his officers, "but do not fire until I give the command." Ilara ended the transmission and turned to her team. "Now we wait." "Wait for what?" Sam asked. "For them to hesitate," Ilara said. "For the first time, they're not sure if they can win. That hesitation is all we need." Above, the Xandari commander stood frozen. The singularity cannon was ready to fire, but his mind was clouded with doubt. If the humans truly had the power to destabilize the mothership, firing the cannon might doom them all. "Commander," an officer asked, awaiting the order. The commander clenched his fists. "Hold fire. I want to see what they do next." On Earth, Ilara exhaled slowly, her gamble working. For now. But she knew the Xandari wouldn't hesitate forever. Her team had bought precious time, but the cost of her bluff was clear. If the Xandari discovered the truth, their retaliation would be merciless. Ilara glanced at the glowing fragment in her hand. "Let's see how far this gamble can take us." Humanity strikes back. The Xandari mothership hovered ominously above the Earth, its massive shadow blanketing entire continents. Inside its cold, metallic halls, the tension was palpable. The singularity cannon, the ship's most destructive weapon, hummed with barely contained energy, awaiting the command to fire. But the command hadn't come. The Xandari commander stood at the central console, his glowing yellow eyes scanning streams of data. The human's message replayed in his mind. Could their threat be real? Could their crude, primitive minds have found a way to destabilize the quantum core? He didn't believe it, but the risk of being wrong gnawed at him. "Commander," one of his officers said, interrupting his thoughts, "our scans have detected a new energy signature coming from the surface. It's faint, but consistent." The commander's jaw tightened. The humans are playing games. This ends now. Prepare the extraction team. I want their leader brought to me. Below in the bunker, Ilara Hayes watched the flickering monitor. She could see the faint outline of the Xandari mothership, its lights glowing red, a signal of impending action. Her bluff had bought them time, but not much. The aliens were growing impatient. "Any sign they've taken the bait?" Sam asked, leaning against the console. He looked pale, the strain of the last battle showing on his face. Ilara nodded slowly. "They're sending a team. Exactly as I planned." Sam frowned. "And when they find out we can't actually destabilize their core?" "What then?" Ilara's sharp gaze met his. "They won't live long enough to figure it out." She turned to the table where the glowing fragment of the disruptor lay, now integrated into a new device. It was smaller than the original disruptor, but far more dangerous. The team had worked non-stop to complete it. A concentrated energy bomb capable of a localized EMP blast strong enough to penetrate even the Xandari mothership's shields. "This is our ace," Ilara said, holding the device up. "We're not just fighting to survive anymore. We're going to hit them where it hurts." Minutes later, the Xandari extraction team landed in the forest near the bunker. The sleek, silver-skinned warriors moved with terrifying precision, their glowing weapons cutting through trees and debris as they advanced. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their mission was clear: capture the human leader and eliminate any resistance. Inside the bunker, Ilara watched their approach on the monitors. She turned to her team, her voice calm but commanding. "You know your roles. Stay sharp. We don't get a second chance." The team moved quickly, taking up positions around the bunker. The traps they had set earlier, a mix of explosive charges and EMP mines, were activated. Ilara herself stayed behind in the control room, clutching the energy bomb. This was her plan, her gamble, and she was ready to see it through. The Xandari reached the bunker's entrance and paused, their glowing eyes scanning for threats. One of them stepped forward. triggering a pressure plate. The explosion was instant, sending a shockwave through the forest and taking out 2 of the warriors. The remaining Xandari didn't falter. They adjusted their approach, avoiding the traps as they moved deeper into the bunker. The first wave reached the central corridor, only to be met with a hail of gunfire and EMP grenades. Ilara's team fought fiercely, using every improvised weapon at their disposal. Sparks flew, walls crumbled, and the air filled with smoke and the metallic screech of alien weapons. But the Xandari were relentless. They pushed forward, their advanced armor shrugging off most of the human attacks. One by one, Ilara's team was forced to retreat, falling back to the control room. "Ilara, they're getting through," Sam shouted, his voice frantic. "We can't hold them much longer." Ilara didn't answer. She was focused on the device in her hands, her fingers flying over its controls. The energy bomb's core pulsed brighter and brighter, emitting a low hum that resonated through the room. "Just a few more seconds," she murmured. In orbit, the Xandari commander watched the battle unfold on his ship's displays. His lips curled into a faint smile as he saw his troops advancing. "Humans are clever," he said softly, "but they lack endurance." An officer turned to him. "Commander, we're detecting unusual energy activity from the bunker. It's concentrated, but unstable." The commander's smile faded. "What kind of energy?" "Unknown, but it matches the signature of the device they used against our fleet." The commander's eyes narrowed. "They're stalling. Prepare the ship for immediate bombardment." Back in the bunker, the Xandari finally breached the control room. Ilara stood alone, the energy bomb cradled in her arms. The warriors surrounded her, their weapons trained on her. "Human," one of them said, its voice a cold mechanical hiss. "Surrender." Ilara smiled faintly. "Not today." She pressed the final button on the bomb and dropped it to the floor. The Xandari hesitated for a split second, long enough for Ilara to grab a grappling hook and launch herself toward an escape hatch. The bomb detonated. The blast wasn't an explosion in the traditional sense. It was a wave of pure electromagnetic energy, expanding outward in a blinding flash. The Xandari warriors were caught in the center, their advanced systems overwhelmed instantly. Their glowing eyes dimmed as they collapsed, lifeless. The wave continued upward, punching through the atmosphere and striking the Xandari mothership. Its shields flickered and failed, leaving the massive vessel vulnerable for the first time. Inside, the commander staggered as the lights dimmed. "What is happening?" he roared. "Commander, the ship's core is destabilizing." An officer shouted. "We've lost shields and weapon control." The commander's jaw tightened. "Begin evacuation. This isn't over." On the ground, Ilara emerged from the bunker, coughing and covered in dust. Her team gathered around her, battered but alive. They looked up at the sky, where the Xandari mothership was now a flickering, smoking shadow of its former self. "We did it," Sam said, his voice filled with awe. "We actually took down their shields." Ilara nodded, her face grim. "But they're not gone yet. We've only cracked the shell. Now we finish the job." She turned to her team, determination burning in her eyes. "This is our chance to strike back, to end this." The final gambit. The Xandari mothership, once a symbol of unstoppable power, now hung in orbit like a wounded beast. Its shields were down, its weapons silenced, and its sleek hull scorched from the energy blast. But it wasn't defeated yet. Inside the command center, the Xandari commander stood amidst chaos. Sparks rained from broken consoles, and the crimson emergency lights painted the room in an eerie glow. Despite the damage, the commander's glowing yellow eyes burned with cold determination. "Activate the self-repair protocols," he barked. "Divert all power to the core. We'll stabilize the systems and finish these humans once and for all." An officer hesitated. "Commander, the energy pulse caused severe destabilization in the core. If we draw more power..." I know the risks. The commander snapped. Do it. I will not let these creatures win. On the ground, Alara Hayes and her team stood in the shadow of the wounded mothership, staring up at the massive vessel. The energy bomb had worked, but the Xandari weren't retreating. If anything, they were more dangerous now, like a cornered predator. They're not leaving, Sam muttered, clutching his rifle. We hit them with everything we had. And they're still here. They're buying time to repair, Alara said, her voice firm. They'll be back in full force unless we finish this now. But how? Another team member asked. We don't have anything left. Ilara's gaze didn't waver. She held up a small device, a beacon cobbled together from scraps of alien tech and human ingenuity. Its faint glow pulsed steadily. We take the fight to them. The room fell silent. Sam's eyes widened. You're not serious. Ilara's expression hardened. We've disabled their shields. Their core is exposed. If we can get inside and overload it, we can destroy the ship. And us along with it, Sam said. Alara didn't flinch. This is the only way. If we don't stop them now, they'll burn our planet to the ground. Moments later, the team prepared for what could be their final mission. Using scavenged alien transport pods, they launched themselves toward the mothership, slipping through the damaged defenses. The pods rattled as they entered the ship's gravity field, and the sight of its towering structure filled the windows. Remember, Alara said over the comms, our goal is the core. Stick to the plan. The pods latched onto the mothership's hull, and the team breached its exterior using cutting tools. Inside, the air was cold and metallic, and the halls pulsed with faint red light. The Xandari hadn't expected a boarding party. Most of their forces were focused on repairing the ship. Move quickly, Alara whispered, leading the group through the labyrinth of corridors. She held the beacon tightly. It would guide them to the core. In the command center, alarms blared as the commander received word of the breach. Humans, he hissed, his claws tightening into fists. They dare to step onto my ship. Shall we deploy the remaining troops, Commander? An officer asked. No, the commander said. Seal off the core. I'll deal with them myself. Alara and her team reached the core chamber, a massive cylindrical room glowing with brilliant white energy. The quantum lattice core pulsed rhythmically, a stark contrast to the damaged state of the ship around it. This is it, Alara said, setting the beacon on the floor. Once activated, it'll overload the core. Sam glanced at her nervously. And how do we get out before it blows? Alara didn't answer. Instead, she activated the beacon. It emitted a low hum, sensing with the core's energy. The room began to vibrate. Before anyone could speak, the door to the chamber slammed open. The Xandari commander strode in, his towering form silhouetted against the red glow of the corridor. You've come far, humans, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. But this is the end of your defiance. Alara stepped forward, placing herself between the commander and her team. You're right, she said, her voice steady. This is the end. For you. The commander snarled and lunged at her, his clawed hand glowing with energy. Alara dodged, narrowly avoiding the strike. Behind her, Sam and the others scrambled to protect the beacon as it worked to destabilize the core. The battle in the core chamber was fierce. The commander's strength and speed were unmatched, and he moved with terrifying precision. Alara fought back with everything she had, using a combination of alien tech and human ingenuity to hold her ground. But she was just buying time. Get out of here, Alara shouted to her team. The beacon's almost done. Go. What about you? Sam yelled. I'll keep him busy, she said, dodging another attack. Go. Reluctantly, the team retreated, making their way back to the transport pods. Sam hesitated at the door, his heart pounding. He wanted to stay to help, but he knew Alara was right. As the team escaped, the beacon reached its final stage. The core began to destabilize, its rhythmic pulses turning erratic. The entire ship shuddered, warning sirens blaring through its halls. The commander roared in fury, realizing what was happening. He lunged at Ilara again, but this time, she didn't move. She held up a small detonator, her gaze unwavering. "This is for Earth," she said, pressing the button. The core erupted in a brilliant explosion of energy, consuming everything in its path. The shockwave tore through the mothership, splitting it apart. From the surface of Earth, the people watched as the Xandari mothership burned in the sky, its massive form breaking into pieces. Cheers erupted as humanity realized what had happened. The invincible alien force had been defeated. Back in the forest, Sam and the teen watched the sky, tears in their eyes. They had won, but the cost was immeasurable. "Ilara," Sam whispered. She was gone, but her sacrifice had saved them all. The story ends with the survivors rebuilding Earth, vowing never to forget the price of their freedom. Ilara Hayes became a symbol of humanity's indomitable spirit, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, human ingenuity could triumph.